This sitting is resumed. Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to rise today to address this amendment to the National Insurance Scheme because, sir, it has been a very welcome change to take place within our country. Across the constituency of St. James South, I have so many self-employed persons, many who are running small businesses, skilled persons such as hairdressers and dressmakers, landscapers, contractors. I have vendors, farmers, mechanics, taxi drivers, a wide swath of self-employed people who get up every day and bravely go forward seeking to build a living, seeking to create income for themselves and for their children. And sir, many people have spoken today about the challenges faced by small businesses and micro enterprises as they struggle in a difficult landscape to be able to make a dollar and turn a living. People have spoken to the demands on their time, and the arrangement of the national insurance was certainly not conducive to supporting MSMEs in relation to time. And therefore, the changes that are proposed here are very, very welcome, and I would want to pass to the Honourable Member for St. Peter the appreciation and the thanks that a number of people who've heard about this change have expressed to me, to express to the National Insurance Scheme, to express thanks for these changes because these will make a tremendous difference in their lives. The two things that I am particularly keen on is the issue of back-paying contributions for previous years. As you would know, Mr. Speaker, many small businesses do not have steady income. The patterns, the seasons that govern how their operations move does not allow for a consistent supply that you can plan and budget in a consistent way in order to be able to meet needs. Indeed, you only need 3 or 4 months of low income to throw you completely off for the rest of the year, because it's very difficult to recover from loss of income over 3 months, to catch back up, to pay the bills that you had to lay aside, pay the bills that are still due, and honor all the commitments which you have. And therefore, many SME owners are always under a lot of financial stress and are always under pressure to respond to the immediate. Because the immediate is often urgent, because it might mean the light turning off, it might mean supplies being cut off because the creditors say you're not going to get anything more until you pay. The pressure of the immediate makes it difficult for them to build the discipline to do the long-term planning required that the NIS demands that we apply in order to ensure that at the end of our working life that we have some sort of income for a pension. And so very often NIS and VAT and taxes will take a back seat because they're not immediate. And we're responding to the urgent, what is right in front of you. And this is how so many of them get tripped up in their journey in entrepreneurship. And sir, I want you to understand what happens within the mind of an entrepreneur, because when they start out on this journey, they see their idea as flourishing quickly. They see their idea catching on and a ready market right there of people clamoring and demanding that good or service. And so for them, the vision that is in front of them is that they are going to be able to build a business that will hit $1 million, that they would always have sufficient money to respond to the needs of the business, the needs of their family, and the aspirations of their dreams. So every day they wake up with this dream in mind and press against the odds, against the difficulties. And Mr. Speaker, one of the most difficult things is when the Barbadian economy hits a rock and it shatters out what little you have already tried to accumulate within the time that you've been an entrepreneur. And you are faced with starting again from scratch. How they find the resolve, the resilience, the courage, the strength to say, I will get up and go on, is a testimony to the quality that is within the entrepreneurs of Barbados. Believe me, sir, it is not easy. Now just imagine that you're living in hope every day that your business is going to take off, it's going to do well. Every now and again it hits bumps, you have to start back again. And then you are coming on to a period when your energies are not what they used to be when you first started. Generally, they're the main producer in that business. It is their skill, it is their ability that is driving the business every day. And as they get older and become less able to make that same length, that same height of contribution, the company will begin to fail. And then to have a time in your life, whether ill health or you naturally come to a place where you cannot take it any further and you have to discontinue the business and you have not seen the success arrive in the way in which you had imagined it when you first started. And then to find that when you come to that moment, you now have a situation where you do not have any provision for your retirement and for your old age. Sir, that is to put a crown of bitterness on the head of an entrepreneur to reach that stage, because very often as they sit and reflect, some of them feel as though they have been failures. Some of them feel that perhaps they should have been able to do better. But for me, sir, I salute every one of them, because the ability to get up every day and face it and push on and to try and try again, I believe that is to be commended. Now, so often entrepreneurs will judge themselves based on how much money they've been able to generate. And they very often do not understand the tremendous contribution that each of them makes to the overall economy. That when we were in office back in 1995, all the way through to 2007, this economy was able to produce 30,000 jobs, not because we had large companies coming in, hiring large numbers of people. We generated 30,000 jobs through the formation of small businesses across this nation. They were the ones that started the businesses and employed one or two people. And it was their contribution to employment, their contribution to the purchase of supplies, their contribution to the overall growth of the Barbadian economy that allowed the Barbadian economy to fire on all cylinders. So that when an assessment was made of the contribution of the SME sector, they saw that between 37 to 40% of GDP came from these entrepreneurs, these small businesses who got up every day and kept those doors open. And so we need to salute them. But sir, we have come to a situation where a change has to happen because we're actually facing a time bomb. The reason and the importance for making the changes to the national insurance legislation to allow people to pay contributions, even back paying, allowing them to get injury benefits, allowing them flexibility as to when they pay. These things are important, an important change in order not only to help the national insurance scheme work better, but to stop the Barbadian economy from bleeding from a bullet hole in its side. And I'll explain what I mean when I say this, sir. When you have an aging society like ours, and you have within the next 10 years or so, more than half of your population will be over 60 years of age. A lot of those are going to be your entrepreneurs as well. And what this means, sir, is that the decline in their business activities as they slow down or as they close means that that contribution, that 40% contribution to the gross domestic product will start to decline unless Barbados can raise a new generation of entrepreneurs who will step into that space and help to keep that contribution going. The second loss, as those entrepreneurs age, will be the contribution that they made to their households, how they were able to help their families, their children, their grandchildren. The other loss will be the employees that they were able to hire and the suppliers that they bought their goods and inputs from. And so that is a bullet hole in the side of the economy where you can get some serious bleeding if it is not addressed. So, bringing to this chamber this particular piece of legislation is very important, but it's only one part of the journey. I'll speak about it a little bit more later. The other problem that we have, because we are an aging society and we've already seen it, is that as people get older and have less income to take care of themselves, we've seen a lot of abandonment at the hospital. So just imagine if we don't plug this hole where we help our entrepreneurs to find a way to make a contribution to their old age, to their retirement, what would happen in Barbados? Could you imagine a country where you have 5 times the number of people who are destitute now, that you have 5 times more existing in Barbados, needing somebody to help them, walking around in the district, walking through town? Imagine a country where if people have not made provision for their pension and their retirement, what condition, what physical condition their homes will be in. The quality of homes would deteriorate, and real estate that really should be an asset will now be run down. And we've seen it from time to time. We've seen it in the newspapers where an older person may be living in a house that they were not able to repair. And then it goes in the paper, how are we going to help this person? Imagine that happening 5 times more in this country because people were not able to make the necessary provision for their retirement. Imagine a situation, sir, where families striving to get ahead, working, but within their wider family network, instead of having maybe 1 or 2 additional people to care for, to make sure they get food and so on, a family circle now finds itself with 4 or 5 people who are unable to take care of themselves in their old age. And as that family network tries to respond to that need, what is that going to mean? It means that they now have to divert resources that would normally be applied to helping a child go to university, to maybe starting their own business, to maybe investing, to maybe repairing the home, to maybe taking out some insurance, maybe to do traveling. Those things will have to go on hold as the family is forced to respond to the fact that they now have several more destitute persons who were not able to put aside something for their old age. It is a serious problem. What it will do is create a serious drag on the Barbadian economy, and that is why it has to be addressed and addressed well. In a situation like that, government then will be forced to step in and respond. So it means government would have to prepare itself to increase its welfare vote, to increase its housing vote, to increase its healthcare services, in order to respond to the fact that you now have thousands of seniors who are unable to take care of themselves and are in need of the state to assist them to make daily living possible. It is a hole in the side of the economy, bleeding out the economy, if it is not addressed. So that's why it's important. And it's important not just for the persons who now have the opportunity to pay their national insurance and to be able to do it in a way that is comfortable for them. It is important for their families, and it's important for the integrity of the entire economy and Barbados, our economy, our society, and how well it is going to function. So what then has to be the response to this opportunity now that we have brought it here? And I want to sincerely thank the Honourable Member for St. Peter for the work of his team, the National Insurance team, the ministry team, in putting together this program that has sought to be responsive and caring about the circumstances which face Barbadian people every single day. It means that all of us, because all of us will face retirement, all of us have relatives and friends, and therefore it is in the interest of every single Barbadian to get involved in helping people to get on board with the payment of their national insurance savings. This is very important for all of us, that we have to encourage our neighbors, our brothers, our uncles, our aunts, everyone that we know, that they need to put in place a program that will help them to be able to make these payments. One of the things, sir, that, they always say that there is a silver lining to every cloud. And while COVID was one of the most difficult things that we would have faced in the last 20, 30 years or so as a country, as a globe, COVID was really a warning bell. I cannot tell you how many times while people were on lockdown, when people could not work, when entrepreneurs could not get out there and do business as usual, how many of them who had ignored the importance of paying their national insurance earnings said, I now understand why it is important. And many of them started pledging, let me tell you something. As soon as this economy opens back again, I am getting up and I'm going out there and I'm going to make arrangements to ensure that I pay my national insurance. And I was very pleased to hear it, because the sharp lesson that COVID presented to us, to me, created the right psychological moment for us as a country to address this issue of making payments and making sustained payments. And what we needed to do was to jump on that energy very quickly and convert it into people who would start paying their national insurance. And that is why I welcome the fact that the national insurance will put out people into the community spaces to work with the entrepreneurs across the country and others to take advantage of this change and to start to make their contributions to the national insurance, so they're putting something aside for their retirement planning. It is urgent. And it's not only the older ones that will be nearing retirement. We now have across the Barbadian economy something we call the gig economy. People who work at spot jobs here and there, not on a steady basis. And many young people prefer that type of approach to getting maybe what people would call a regular job. We are going to have to reach them and make sure that they start very early to make sure they put aside and plan for their retirement through making their national insurance contributions, so that when it is needed most, they can benefit. Now, across the government, we don't work in silos. The plans that we develop as a government to be able to take this country forward often requires the assistance of more than one ministry to be able to achieve the result. And so today I want to share what the Ministry of Energy and Business Development will be doing in relation to supporting the Ministry of Labour and the National Insurance Institution in making good of these provisions. We started back in October 2022 with the Financial Literacy Training Program. COVID had affected us significantly, and we had to stop. And we've now restarted that program, reaching out to people online, in workshops, etc. We just recently launched the schools program, and we're working assiduously with a number of schools in the pilot project to get financial literacy training available in our schools. Right now, the ministry is working on community development training, where we have started holding discussions with our partner ministries about taking financial literacy into the community. But one of the biggest discussions that we had in the ministry was when we were discussing the advent of working towards a silver economy. And we were discussing, Mr. Speaker, the importance of our doing financial literacy training for our seniors in our communities. We have so many seniors who right now are depending on their national insurance pension. But sir, with the rising cost of living, it is a struggle for them to manage on those funds. It's a struggle because their families are also struggling after the COVID recovery to be able to assist them to live comfortably. And so one of the things that we recognize is that we needed to do financial literacy training with our seniors to help them to understand what are some of the precautions, first of all, that they need to take against the depredations of abusers, because there are many people around who abuse the elderly when it comes to their finances. To be able to share with them what are some of the precautions that they need to take to ensure that those who are entrusted with helping them to pay their bills are not unfairing them. And we want to help them to understand that there is more that they can do in order to put aside something to help them through their retirement phase. And so I believe that one of the things that we need to stress significantly in our population is that issue of retirement planning. And we want to do that not just with our seniors, but with our middle-agers and with our young people, because if they can start early, they're going to be able to amass sufficient funds that they should be able to take care of themselves in their old age and be able to live a comfortable life. This is what we want for them to do. So in thinking through how we are going to pour out financial literacy among the seniors, we recognize that there are two things that we need to do. First of all, it is very difficult sometimes for seniors to come out to a session. Sometimes because they're not driving like they used to. They don't always feel well. Some don't have transport and therefore find it difficult maybe to get to a central location to take a class. So one of the things that we want to be able to do is to see how we can boost the capacity of seniors to use technology. Now, I know some of them shy away from it because they feel it's too hard. They feel that they can't learn anything new at this time. But one of the things that I recognize as an MP is that if we don't help our seniors to master technology, their capacity to live alone, comfortably, independently, and securely will be compromised unless they can use technology to help them to be able to live an independent life. Because with the best will in the world, sir, Our country cannot build sufficient geriatric hospitals. A lot of them cannot afford the private care, and therefore it is important for us to find meaningful ways for our people to be able to live comfortably in their old age in their own homes, but not homes that are tumbling around them because they were not able to put aside something for pensions to be able to repair them and keep them in good service. So one of the things that will have to accompany any program to help our seniors, sir, would have to be to provide them with the opportunity to learn how to use their phones, how to use their computers, to be able to engage the wider world, and so that they can keep track of their own finances and they can keep track of what is happening around them and be able to get what they need, get brought to them so that they can live as independently as possible at home. And once we are able to achieve that, be able to help them use technology, this will make it much easier for us to be able to help them with financial literacy training. And we believe that this will go a long way to protecting them from the abuse, and we believe that this will help them to make better sense of how they use their resources. Right now, we know that in the banks are not given very much in terms of interest. As a matter of fact, by the time they take off all the various fees that they want to take off, you are really in a dissaving situation. But Barbadians still feel that their money is safe, it's sitting on a bank. Don't mind it's being nibbled away week by week, month by month. And we have to be able to show them a better way to be able to manage their finances. Now, one of the items here that I want to just draw to the attention through you, Mr. Speaker, to self-employed persons, are to the persons who do extra work. They may be employed with someone. They may feel that what they're earning is not enough, and they may have a side hustle that they use in order to generate money. Some of them do this in the interest of building up that business to eventually transition from employment into self-employment. And I welcome the fact that what has been included here is a provision for people to make additional contributions outside of what their employer is actually providing for them under the National Insurance Scheme. I think that this is excellent. And if we can help them to see that if they cannot afford a life insurance policy or where they work does not have a pension plan, that they could actually use the NIS to be able to put additional money to help increase the amount of pension that they will draw when they retire, I think that this would be an excellent and useful thing. Now, sir, before I end, there are a couple of things that have always concerned me as a person in business and in management about the National Insurance Scheme, and that is the attitude of people generally to it. I cannot tell you how many countless times I've heard people say, I don't know if I'm going to live to 80, so I'm going to lick out everything I can out of the NIS now because I might die before I am able to draw from a fund that I have put money in every week, every month. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard it. And what I want to say to them through you, Mr. Speaker, is this. Barbadians are living longer. Barbadians have an average age expectancy of between 78 years to 80 years. The chances of you reaching that stage are very strong. And therefore, it is foolhardy, it is to play with your future for a Barbadian to say, I don't care, I take out as much as I can from the National Insurance Scheme. If I go home sick, if I ask for sick leave, I would get money and I would be able to take care of myself till I feel ready to go back to work. If I get laid off, I'm going to take all of the unemployment benefits for all the weeks that I can before I go and start another job. Well, I want to give people some news. I will never forget this incident. My mother worked as an education officer, came up through the Ministry of Education as a teacher, head teacher, became an education officer. And I remember when she retired, she would have been one of the lucky ones that got 2 pensions. And I'll never forget when the first check came home. Mom looked at it in surprise and slight dismay. She said, something is wrong. This is too much. Somebody made a mistake, and I better not cash this because I might have to give it back. Because her experience with the other members of her profession and her friends within the teaching profession showed that when it came to NIS payments, that theirs would be a lot smaller than hers. And so she was very nervous. So when she went back to the ministry, she asked someone, please, can you check this for me? Because there has to be some error. This is so much more than what other people have. And on checking, they came back to her and said, Mrs. Husbands, the reason why yours is this size is because you did not take out sick leave, you did not do this, and you did not do that. She was so relieved. If people understood that if you drain your contributions on every little excuse because you fear that you are not going to live long enough to get all of the benefits and then find yourself living long enough to regret it, I think Barbadians need to take another turn. And I want to pledge to the Ministry of Labor and to the members of the National Insurance Scheme that the Ministry of Energy and Business will want to work very closely with them in providing the financial literacy training that will help people to understand the importance of their contributions, the importance of putting a system in place to help them make those contributions. And this is where family helps. Someone can be a great entrepreneur, but they're not good at managing money. There are people who are great with ideas, but the discipline to take out a sum every week, every month, no matter how small, and put it aside, that is not easily or readily available to a lot of people. And when an emergency comes, the temptation to take it up is so strong. But if you have someone by your side who understands the importance of the fact that you're going to reach 80, that you are going to retire when you hit 67 or 70 or 75, and you will need money, who will protect you from yourself and ensure that that money is taken out and deposited so that when your contribution check comes to you, you can say, I can be safe. I can make it through retirement because this check is going to help me. I thank God that I was able to put this aside, that I could get a decent contribution. So I want to encourage every single Barbadian within the hearing of my voice to take this seriously and to pledge from now, start and look at the ways in which you are going to find to put aside a little something to be able to ensure that you are saving towards your retirement. And we look forward to working with every one of them in the financial literacy training programs to help them identify what they can do, not only to increase income, but increase their savings, build their assets, and so live a comfortable life. I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. James North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to make a contribution in support of this bill before Parliament today, ably led by the Honourable Member for St. Peter. The Social Security and National Insurance is one of the most significant socio-economic policy aspects of any society, any part of the world. In the United States, of course, Social Security came in the early 1930s in the aftermath of the tremendous economic difficulties that country had in the 1920s with the collapse of a lot of businesses and cartels, and in the aftermath, of course, of the First World War in the earlier part of the century. England, of course, which was our colonial power, subsequently got Social Security legislation as well, and we, as an independent country, would have legislated this social policy area, 1967, shortly after our independence. And it's played a tremendous role in our national development. Perhaps the majority of our people do not understand the importance of the role and the importance of paying national insurance and the importance it has played in our development. And in this, we, in my submission, need to do more public outreach and inform our people as to its significance. Even our children should be part of our civic discussions at school level among children as to the importance and the necessity to pay national insurance contributions when you start to work. This is an area which needed reform. It was recognized as needing reform for years. The tin, so to speak, was kicked down the line under the last administration, and it fell to this administration to carry out the reforms. And it is, in my opinion, extremely hypocritical for those on the other side of the political fence to be criticizing what this government has embarked on and is continuing to embark on in terms of Social Security reform. The scheme couldn't go on as is, and this government has taken the extremely wise and humane decision to push back a lot of the reforms to give people the opportunity. So therefore, the increase in age at which the pensionable age to 67 is going to be a two-step process, first in 1927 and then in 1933, a whole decade from now. The contributions aspect, to raise the contributions from 500 to 750 to acquire a full pension is wise and is sensible. And after all, 750 contributions, what? When you divide that by the amount of months, it is what, 15 years or so? Paying every month or every week. That is reasonable to arts of a population for the benefits that you will get. We are an aging society. It is shown that, over 50% of our people, I believe it is, would be 60 years or over by the middle of this century. It is a forward-thinking government that has done what we have done now for the second time within 4 months, bringing Social Security and National Insurance legislation to this Parliament, plus a ministerial statement. It had to be done. And those who criticize what this government has done clearly do not understand the business of governance and the responsibility of being a political directorate and serving the people and looking out in the best interests of the people of this country. But why we're back here today, sir, has great emphasis on the issues of self-employment benefits to self-employed persons, which has been a challenge in terms of getting self-employed people to pay the contributions which they ought to be paying to the scheme. We have heard, sir, today and previously that only about 15% of the self-employed people in this country pay into the scheme. I don't believe that we have accuracy in terms of the number of self-employed people there are, because as has been said today, sir, for instance, people may have a contract service job, yes, but on the side as hassle, they're doing the side work too. Nothing wrong with that. Whether it's on weekends after their normal work hours, sir. And they are being counted for as self-employed for these purposes, sir, because they can go and register, even register online, and pay towards NIS as a self-employed person to top up their contributions and the amount, their pensionable amount that they will get when they reach retirement age. So they have to be counted too as self-employed persons. So I don't know if across the ministries there is a figure for who are the amount of people who are self-employed in this country. What I do know though, sir, is that self-employment and by its natural corollary, small business, mid-sized business, micro businesses, account for a significant percentage of the gross domestic product of this country, as it does for most countries. Small business and self-employment, sir, makes up a significant percentage of the economy of a country. And in my constituency, St. James North, there are many self-employed persons, sir, who have taken advantage of course, the fact that my constituency is one of the constituencies that benefit most from our tourism product. And of course, you have people therefore selling their services and their goods to tourists and also, of course, to Barbadians. That itself brings its challenges though, sir, because of course, as we all know, tourism in this country is still to a large extent seasonal. We're about to embark on the high tourist season now for the next 5 months or so, but it is seasonal, and therefore the platform by which self-employed persons can pay a one-off amount into the NIS as their contribution each year, or pay 3 times a year, depending on how the money coming in, how the income coming in, is extremely wise and realistic. That is understanding the dynamics of society, our society, and our people in terms of their income earning ability and capacity. The issue, though, sir, is that self-employed people, and I join the chorus, if you want to call it that, or anyone wants to call it that, of members of Parliament here today who are calling on, urging, begging those who are self-employed, those who right now do not pay any national insurance, to pay. This is our month of independence. We all say that we are patriots, we love Barbados. But Barbados doesn't operate in a vacuum out there, sustaining itself. Barbados has to be sustained and grow and develop by the contribution of our people. Well, people is our people are our major source of resource. And it can't be that you have people, I think the word used earlier by the Honourable Member for St. Peter was somewhat less people, who feel that you must take out of Barbados, but not put in. But life doesn't work that way. It can be that there are people who feel that I'm going to sit back and still get a non-contributory pension at the end of the day, but don't put in anything into the scheme, but expect that the integrity of the scheme is going to be maintained. We've heard often in this parliament that about $155 million was spent by the National Insurance Office to sustain Barbados and Barbadians during the 2.5 years that we fought valiantly and won against COVID, to keep Barbadians alive, to sustain Barbadians, to pay them an income. Self-employed people getting $1,500, I believe it was, over a 3-week period or 4-week period of time when the country was on lockdown and only essential workers could go to work. But there's a cost to that. The money doesn't fly out of the sky like manna. You have to put back in to get out. And I'm calling on Barbadians in this, our month of independence, when everyone is filled with national pride, wearing the colors, wearing the pins, the flags on the car, the houses, to realize that their national duty is to contribute. The Honourable Member for Christchurch, he spoke earlier about professionals who don't pay. Yes, it's a fact. A lot of members of the legal profession, the accounts profession, medicine, don't pay. Top earners, income earners among self-employed in this country. I myself, as an attorney at law, started to pay NIS within the first 4 years of my law practice. Not at the maximum amount that I could have paid in terms of the income that I made, but I paid some. Every 3 quarters, I think I paid. Every quarter, sorry. Because I felt not only that it was important and within my interest to pay, but because it was my national duty to pay. But additional to that, sir, people who are regarded as not professional people, but I regard them as professionals, sir, because they earn more income than a lot of lawyers and a lot of doctors and a lot of accountants, tradespeople, plumbers, electricians. They don't pay either, a lot of them, sir. And I mean, a plumber with whom I'm very close, I was urging him all the time to pay. And he came to Christian understanding when, regrettably, he had a back injury. So he couldn't earn income for about 6 months. And he said, but Mr. Hinkson, when I checked with him last year, he told me, but I start paying NIS now. And you know, COVID was terrible, terrible. I would not want to see anything like that again in my lifetime. But it had some benefits, because surely it must have taught some of us who weren't paying that you need to pay. Because if your income drops substantially, you're not working, you have to draw on the benefits of the NIS. It's our lifeline, as the saying goes. So I trust that many people, many self-employed persons who were not paying before COVID came along, understand that they need to pay now. But you know, some of us believe, you know, money flowing in, and we only living for now. We living for the time being. We're not thinking about our future or about even our children in some cases. But you have to plan. That is what life is about. And I urge Barbadians not to spend all the money that they're making now on things that, quite honestly, are not as important as NIS. Whether it's clothes, whether it's fancy hair, long nails, the woman, fancy clothes, shoes, the men. But put money aside for NIS. This government is giving you the full ambit to pay. Pay online, pay when you have money. You know, minimum of $1,200 a year. Back pay contributions with a bit of interest, 5%. We heard from the Honourable Minister of Labour But you could back pay some because, yes, some people have fallen short by 10 contributions from the 500 in the past and are in anguish. So you're creating the realistic platform whereby people can pay, going back 3 years, contributions that they ought to have made then, but they didn't make. And this is what a caring government does. The issue, sir, of the provision that the funding policy should be laid in Parliament once handed to the minister is very transparent, sir. I believe that this would be the first time there will be legislative provision for that the funding policy developed by what would be called the service, National Insurance and Social Security Service, has to be laid in Parliament, come to the public knowledge. And the minister has, within 6 weeks after it has been laid in Parliament, to respond. And I'm assuming, sir, that response would have to be given in Parliament too. That can't be any response that between friends and secret. That response would have to be in Parliament as well for the public to be given the response. The provision, sir, that the actuarial review must be done within 3 years of the establishment of this act, and thereafter within 3 years following is very wise, sir. And I trust that the board and the present minister and future ministers would ensure that that is compiled with actuarial reviews, because in the past that hasn't been followed to the letter. But clearly it should be in terms so that at all times the Parliament of Barbados and the public, through the Parliament, of course, the public of Barbados know about where we're at in terms of the funding and the stability and integrity of the scheme, which is very important. In terms of employment injury benefits, sir, for self-employed persons, this is extremely important, sir, because we're talking here about someone who has a disability, whether it is temporary or permanent, being able to access employment injury benefits through the NIS. Of course, again, once they have paid and contributed to the scheme. And this is where it's important, because regrettably, sir, anybody, as we've said all the time, can get an injury tonight, God forbid, and be out, life going along well, car accident, fall, whatever, and you're laid up 6 months if you're lucky, more if you're struggling, sir. And no income coming in from your self-employment or employment, and therefore you have to depend on government, sir. Government is always the fallback position, especially in this Barbados, sir. And I know about this, the challenge and the significance of this provision, sir, because people all over Barbados call me, sir. Well, I don't have any formal position now in government in terms of disabilities, but people feel so. I mean, a third of a century in the cause as a disability advocate, sir. So people all over Barbados, all constituents of every member of Parliament in here, sir, call me, message me, WhatsApp me, email me for advice. Now have a disability, they were employed, not getting any income, what help they could get, sir. And right now, where it is, Ministry of People Empowerment, that under tremendous pressure, might give you a little grant or a little welfare. We now have the 1,000 families, sir, that you're helping. But this is, if there's any reason why self-employed people should contribute to the NIS scheme, it is this. Because the employment injury benefits now, of which was spoken in terms believe, of the ministerial statement, and which is part of this whole policy and legislative and regulatory setup, sir, is very important. Because to have a disability and not have income coming in readily, and therefore having to go through the bureaucracy of our welfare system, which is being reformed now, and which I hope that the Honourable Member for St. Michael South will shortly be able to inform the public of Barbados in concrete terms as to the reform, it has to be brought into play. But it's only so much that our welfare platform can do as well. And the people have to make it easier, not only for the administration and our people and our government with the limited financial resources that we have, but easier for themselves as well. The issue, sir, of CARICOM, sir, and I speak to this, sir, it hasn't been raised before today, but as we all know, our heads of government have committed our CARICOM statehood to come to closer union in terms of full freedom of movement. I believe the date given at present is March 31st next year. And I know that discussions are going on at many levels, drafting committees, implementation committees, policy committees in various areas on this. As we all know, right now we have freedom of movement among skilled nationals. Barbados recognizes, I think it's 12 skilled nationals at present. But if we're talking about full freedom of movement between our CARICOM sister nations, something that is present already in our sub-regional group, the OEMCS, those 7-8 countries, they have full freedom of movement. Issues as to transferability of social security benefits is of prime importance. And therefore we have to get this right, sir. In 1996 in Georgetown, the CARICOM nations would have signed an agreement allowing for transferability of national insurance and social security benefits among CARICOM nations and peoples, sir. That agreement came into effect in April or May 1997. So for example, a Guyanese worker, whether employed or self-employed in Guyana, who comes and lives here, can have the benefits in Guyana, which would have accrued in Guyana, added to the benefits here on retirement to bring up the amount of pension that they will get. Barbados, of course, would be obliged to pay the percentage of the benefits which would have accrued while they were working in Barbados. The Treaty of Chaguaramas, the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, which came into effect, I think it was in 2005, sir, would have enhanced those rights. I think it's section, clause 237 that speaks about contingency rights, which would be health and education and national insurance, social security benefits, sir. So the National Insurance Scheme Services, as it would be called after the establishment of this act, has a primary duty, sir, and responsibility at CARICOM level to ensure that people can get their benefits as they move across our CARICOM nation, seeking work and obtaining work, either as employed persons, employed by companies, etc., which would have the responsibility enterprises to deal with their NIS, but also a self-employed person, sir. And if it is that the service needs more resources to take on this so that there are no challenges, sir, I would be all for them getting the resources, sir, and for monies to be voted in this parliament to make that will cause the service national insurance set up to be more efficient in this regard and to be able to respond better to its customers and to the public. The issue, and the Honourable Member for St. George North spoke earlier today, and of course, her tremendous experience as a trade unionist, trade union and a labour movement practitioner is unmatched in this parliament, sir. And she spoke correctly on the issue of government and the need for governments, government institutions and departments to come up to smarts on this issue. So we know that in some cases, traditionally, sir, we are not only talking about now. I mean, when I was chairman of NCC, sir, and that was, 28 years ago, NCC never used to pay or didn't pay much of the employees' contributions into NIS. I think at one time about $6 million was owed, sir. Even though, we used to urge. And then, yes, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West is correct. Legislation came in, the VAT Act, and I believe they had an amendment to the NIS Act then too. Around 1997, the VAT Act came in that said directors would be liable. So every meeting, I used to ensure that the management bring the figures before the board and it be noted on the records of the minutes, the board has directed the management to pay the NIS, to pay the VAT, whatever statutory contributions owing. Because that of course, you had the out there. You had the out. You make your best efforts to ensure that the corporation pay. So government also has to ensure that it pay up the national insurance benefits of its employees. And yes, the Honourable Member for St. George North is correct. I mean, it isn't that the NIS is going to deny a government employee who is on maternity leave, or just had a child, maternity benefits where her employer institution is in arrears at NIS. But all of this is part of proper governance structure. And we as a government institutions, departments, statutory boards, have to set the example in this regard. So the classic case, without referring specifically to it, but again, it came up, at least the concept, the issue came up for debate earlier, was that we employed as workers, sir, and nobly, sir, as the Honourable Member for St. George North said, they were only initially contracted to work 3 weeks, but it went on and on for 2 years, sir, because this government accepted that you couldn't send home. In all, it's close to 4,000 people the government employed during COVID. What are we going to do? How are we going to get money? Well, welfare didn't have all the money you could support them. So you continue to employ as workers, sir. But initially, there was no payment of NIS for them. So there was a situation, a constituent of mine who fell in a well, sir. And yes, I called up the government department, the Ministry of Transport, and said, but look, y'all gotta continue paying this lady her income. Well, she got an injury on the job, fell in a well, going, not knowing that the well there, of course, leg broken. And the Ministry of Transport, yes, continued to pay her the weekly wages. But the issue came up then as to no compensation for personal injuries, loss and damage, and of course consequential losses and damage as well. And I commend the Honourable Deputy Prime Minister, the Minister for Public Works, Transport, member for St. Michael East, for intervening.
Southeast.
Sorry,
Southeast.
what did I say?
East.
I said south.
You said
Oh,
east.
I said east, sorry, southeast, for intervening in this matter when it was brought to her attention. I'm not the attorney at law involved, but she intervened when it was brought to her attention and intervened immediately where her ministry's legal advice was within the strict corners of the law, that the ministry had no legal responsibility to pay personal injury settlement to this lady, my constituent. But clearly, the ministry had a moral responsibility because these niceties, sir, as you know, sir, a leading British judge once said that the law, I don't want to say, you know the word, sir. I'm not so sure whether that word is parliamentary or not.
I don't think it is.
It isn't parliamentary.
It's not parliamentary.
It isn't parliamentary, sir. But to paraphrase, he said the law is a lot of foolishness sometimes. And that is true. The law is a lot of foolishness sometimes. So you can't go by the strict corners of the law and say this lady who injured on the job, fall down in a well, right? Not able to work, that the Ministry of Transport or the government not responsible to pay her an ex gratia personal injury settlement, sir, because it don't come within the four corners of foolish law. The Honourable member intervened, and I believe a settlement is being worked out. That is what a caring government is about, sir. But that exemplified what I'm speaking about, sir, the duty of a government to not get involved in these contractor services that somewhat less private sector employees getting into, sir, contracting out services and telling you that you're self-employed independent contractor, even though they're controlling your work, your hours of work, what you're doing, sir. And this has to be addressed quite honestly, sir. So government has to take the lead. I do call as well, though, on the private sector not to take out money out of your employee's salary and not pay it in. I know, sir. I know, because I'm an attorney at law, so therefore I have had throughout my years businesses as clients and being involved in businesses. I know that money could be tight sometimes. That is the truth. But you can't be taking out the employee's portion of NIS and not paying it into the NIS, because you paying it, you keeping it to sustain your business, and in a lot of cases, the employee don't even know that the money not being paid. And when they retire, they're going out to NIS to try to get something to hear the money there for them, sir. And really and truly, I call in here today too, sir, on the NIS and the authorities to prosecute more people on this issue. Is order to get the unpaid debt certificate and to register it, but enforce it as well. I know, sir, I know this country, and I know that this is a country where people feel that they could make a phone call and therefore then they get eased off, sir. We gotta stop that, because it doesn't benefit the country as a whole. It doesn't add to our national development. And in fact, I can argue that it's corrupt practice too. So don't be afraid of anybody enforce the unpaid debt certificates that you have against the private sector people who are guilty of these fraudulent kind of practices against poor people, the poor employees who get taken for a ride.
Your Honourable member has 2 more minutes.
Yes, sir. So I totally support this bill, sir, and the whole thrust of this administration in terms of reform of its social security system, our social security system, and our national insurance, sir. The results, though, sir, are going to be in the implementation. These are beautiful ideas. We call on the self-employed to register and to pay. It can't be that only 15% of our self-employed people paying into a scheme, sir, that is so fundamental to the socio-economic development of our people. And we look forward, sir, to the reforms. Some of them will take place in January. The move from $500 to $750 contribution. But some will have been put off for a while, as this government has wisely thought fit. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable member for St. George. Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Speaker, I know it has been a very long day, and I don't wish to detain the House. But, Mr. Speaker, it would pain me to know that I came to this chamber today. I didn't speak for at least 5 minutes on this very important bill. Mr. Speaker, I just heard the member for St. James North. Listen to the member for St. George North. Sat there and I listened to you. And Mr. Speaker, while I don't intend on dwelling in the past, Mr. Speaker, I sat where the member for St. Lucie is presently sitting some years ago, just over 5 years ago. And Mr. Speaker, I recall, I heard the member touch on it, but I recall vividly, like a few hours ago, debate on our social security system, reviewing our actuarial reports, and Mr. Speaker, discussing how we can get our unemployed persons, in my view, moving to what I call the formal sector from the informal sector, paying into the national insurance scheme, simply because, Mr. Speaker, at the time, I don't think the self-employed sector, and I'm going to use the words, they're not all SMEs, small business enterprises, but I don't think back then, we had such a vibrant SME sector. And this is not to throw any cold water on work that was done prior to us coming to office. But this is basically, Mr. Speaker, just to recollect where we came from, where we are now. And there are two words, Mr. Speaker, that I will use, I continue to use, to really explain, to really define this government. And those two words, Mr. Speaker, are transformational and inclusive. Transformational and inclusive. Because, Mr. Speaker, I recall again, not to dwell in the past, and I shadowed back then the ministry that my good friend for St. Peter has responsibility for now. That sector, national insurance scheme. And while I'm no expert, Mr. Speaker, I was able to read, I was able to analyze, and I was able to decipher for myself and for the opposition at the time that the government of the day was doing an injustice to public servants. Because, Mr. Speaker, the actuarial report revealed that in some years, they were not paying in the contributions that they were supposed to pay for public servants. We are not to forget that. And I'm using that, Mr. Speaker, to further cement my point with respect to transformation and being inclusive. We know, Mr. Speaker, it is the dream of every Barbadian. The dream of every Barbadian who toil long and hard, whether on these shores or abroad, that in their twilight years, they will receive some benefit, that they can sit down, go on a cruise, and have some enjoyment with their families. And it is transformational measures, Mr. Speaker, like these, that seek to put our social security system on a good footing and on good grounding. That all of us in here as well can enjoy our retirement, and every single Barbadian that toiled long and hard, member for St. George North, can enjoy their retirement. And that is why I could not allow this occasion to pass without me saying a few words for 5 or 10 minutes on this important piece of legislation, this bill to amend the National Insurance and Social Security Act, to amend the law related to the system of national insurance and social security for the establishment of a body corporate. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, while that is good, make better provisions for self-employed persons. And Mr. Speaker, we know that we enjoy the elements of our social security system in this country, one of the best in the Caribbean. We have more elements in our social security system, as articulated by the member for St. Peter today, than most countries. But Mr. Speaker, who will benefit from these amendments and these transformational and these legislative changes? We came to office, Mr. Speaker, in 2018, and I had the responsibility, Mr. Speaker, for the small business sector and commerce in this country. I thank the Prime Minister, member for St. Michael Northeast, for giving me the opportunity to learn, not only to implement, but to learn, because it was a learning experience for me despite my training. Because at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, when we look at some economies across the globe, and I go just close to the US, the small business sector is one of the key sectors that keep the United States economy buoyant. It is one of the sectors in the face of adversity, world recessions, that sector within the economy, and you can research it. I did when I was in charge of that key sector, the small business sector. So I understood then the reason why our Prime Minister saw the need to inject funding into fund access, to inject funding and to start the Barbados Trust Fund Limited. And yours truly, if there's one good thing that you can say that I did back then, members, my colleagues, for the 5 years, was to preside over the implementation and the opening of the doors of the Barbados Trust Fund Limited. But it's not about me. I pat myself, member for St. James, I'll tell me to pat myself. Thank you, colleague, my neighbor, running mate. But it's not about me, member, Mr. Chairman. It is about the vision that this institution had to propel a sector to ensure that the domestic economy receives some level of buoyancy. Because we know it was a dying sector prior to 2018. It was a dying sector. The small business sector in this country was a dying sector. Despite the efforts of the Small Business Association, and I must compliment the Small Business Association, the credit unions, they tried their best. But this government had the foresight to inject the funding to start with micro businesses and to ignite the SME sector. And Mr. Speaker, that sector is a sector that would benefit from these legislative amendments to this act. Because I know very well persons who were self-employed, and I can call one or two, but I would not do that in this chamber, who work in their own businesses, but one particular person who was injured, as a self-employed person. Good luck. His business made some good dollars at a time when he was fit. But the injury, having to climb a ladder, and not having the foresight then to pay into a system of national insurance, he was unable, Mr. Speaker, to receive any money at all to help him with his medical bills. And that is the real reason why I stood on my feet this afternoon, Mr. Speaker, because you know when things come home to you and they touch you, then you really see the importance of what we are doing here this afternoon. And I want to thank those members, a member for St. George North, a member for St. Peter, the other members of the board. Some are here, CEO of the NIS. I want to thank you all for the work that you have done. You have now given hope to a sector. You have now given inspiration to a sector, to persons. You have now given them the opportunity to move into from the informal to the formal business sector. To be recognized, because when you begin to pay your contribution, then based on what I'm seeing here in these consequential amendments, you'll be able to claim for injury benefits for self-employed persons. You will be able in your twilight years to receive something when you sit down and put your foot up. And these are the things that give you the motivation to carry on as an SME. These are the things that give you the motivation and the will to say, listen, look, let me get up and start my own business. Because when something happens, I have a fallback. I can rest assured that this country has provided the legislative framework that I can do business and feel comfortable as a self-employed person. This was never the case in this country. Self-employed persons felt as if they were on their own. Because what the consequential amendment showed me as well, Mr. Speaker, and I like to refer National Insurance and Social Security Self-Employed Persons Regulation, 1970, SI 1971, number 1, continue. Payment of contribution. A self-employed person may elect to pay a contribution due for a contribution year in full by a single payment or by installments. That's the fundamental aspect of it. You don't have to pay all in one. And we have to break it down. And I know my good neighbor next to me, member for St. James South, who holds the portfolio for small business under that Ministry of Energy and Business. There have to be a level of education, sensitization, through the financial literacy program to allow persons to understand what we just came into this parliament and what will pass in a few minutes. This is transformational and this is inclusive. Mr. Speaker, when we open the Trust Fund Limited, and I'm going to end shortly, when we open the Trust Fund Limited, Mr. Speaker, I think after the first 2 years, we give every single member that sat in this chamber, including the member for St. Michael West End, a man of the cloth by name of, I should call him, the former member of St. Michael West, who chose to go on his own. He too was given the opportunity to submit names of persons who wanted to start their own businesses but never had the finance or the wherewithal. And we didn't only give them the money, but we give them the necessary tutoring, how to start up a business, what they should do. So that today, those 4,000 persons that when I left that ministry, we had 4,000 businesses registered at a value of over 10 million. You know what it is today? That's why I stood up, you know. I stood up today. I'm going to read it so you don't make any mistake. 6,709 disbursements. 6,709 disbursements. Total females, 2,577. Total males, 2,192. But the total number of loans, the total number of employment opportunities, let me correct myself. Total number of employment opportunities as a result of the Trust Loan Fund is 6,709. But the total number of businesses started, 4,769. So we have some 4,769 businesses across the length and breadth of this country. And we didn't come in here to say because so-and-so was a minister, he gets the most. We distributed across every single constituency. And I'm proud to report today that the member for St. James South and the member for St. James Central and those who followed have indeed done a wonderful job. The total value of the loans disbursed, $22 million. And Mr. Speaker, these are the persons who will benefit from these consequential amendments, who will benefit when these amendments go into, when they are proclaimed and this bill becomes an act. The small business sector, Mr. Speaker, while I don't want to use the words will save this economy, I know the small business sector, Mr. Speaker, will support this economy. And as we move from strength to strength, you know, the strength of any country to attract investment, and I said it last week in this chamber, is the regulatory and legislative framework that it has. And I compliment the astute legal mind in the chamber, sitting, listening to this debate, someone that I know very well, for his sterling contribution in ensuring that our legislative framework and regulatory framework is one that we can boast of as a country and as a small island developing state, and as a country that is now poised to boast about its small business sector. As I end, Mr. Speaker, I urge the Small Business Association and its members, I urge through the financial literacy program that we will continue our educational program, our advocacy across the length and breadth of this country, so that our small businesses, while they may become energized, we give them the necessary guidance, because the framework is now in place, that they can now go on from strength to strength, and that these small and micro enterprises that we are catering for, by putting such wonderful legislative framework in place, that they can go on to become big and large businesses, and they can take those businesses beyond these shores. Mr. Speaker, I compliment again the member for St. Peter, and I support this bill to amend the legislation, national insurance, and to strengthen our social security system, and to allow our self-employed persons to have better provisions in terms of social security. And with those few words, I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Peter.
I had to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Allow me first to thank all the honourable members who participated in this debate. I think from the contributions that we heard today, we recognize the importance of a number of things. One is the responsibility of a government to take care of its people, to put systems in place that allow them to be protected. We also recognize the importance of facilitating people who intend to launch out on their own, do their own thing, who are not contented to ask somebody for a job, send out applications, but who want to do their own thing. A government has to encourage that kind of risk-taking, that kind of independent thinking, that kind of dependence on self and on the gifts that the Creator has given to all of us. And we also recognize the importance of the small business sector to this economy, to this country, and to its development. I want, as I wrap up this debate, to use this as a teaching, learning moment, because I used the term earlier, decent work, and I spoke to Social Security. But I think I should also say to this chamber and to Barbadians generally, just by way of information, but information that I hope will be helpful and beneficial, even as we engage in certain conversations. Decent work is part of the agenda that much of the world is working toward. And there are 4 pillars. Social security is one of those pillars. All 4 are important, but I'm just going to share the other 3. The first pillar is promoting jobs and enterprise. Promoting jobs and enterprise. The second one is guaranteeing rights at work. Guaranteeing rights at work. And I'm sure that at some point in time in the near future, we may have to speak some more to these rights at work. I mentioned social protection, which is the third pillar. The fourth pillar is promoting social dialogue. That is something, that in particular, is something that this government is sometimes accused of doing too much of. People say that we consult, we're always holding town halls, we believe in social dialogue. All of this is really designed to move workers from informality to formality, to formal work, from precarious work to decent work. And that is the path that this government has chosen, being one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Labour Party in the Caribbean. We remain firmly committed to our roots. Those roots being to uplift. We were born out of the struggle of working people. And we remain committed to lifting, doing all that we can to move working people forward. Whether those working people are employed by somebody or providing services to somebody else. Self-employed persons, Mr. Speaker, must not wait until disaster strikes. Self-employed persons need to commit themselves to joining the National Insurance Scheme or Social Security system now. It is for their protection. We're all in this together. We heard various categories of persons mentioned. All of us, whether we are doctors, hair braiders, taxi operators, entertainers, consultants, it doesn't matter. Tradespeople, all of us are in this together. Social Security is all of us coming together to make this protection system work. This bill, the bill that we have debated extensively today, is designed to make it easier for self-employed persons to participate in our social security system. Before I close, Mr. Speaker, I will be thanking the drafters in the Office of the Chief Parliamentary Counsel. They have done significant work on this legislation. Significant work in the lead up to the debate we had in July, and significant work since then. Constant interaction with the office at NIS, constant interaction with the parent ministry that I have the honor really to be part of the leadership of. Those drafters have contributed significantly, and I sincerely thank them for the work that they have done. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I commend this bill to this House. I commend this bill to the people of our country, and I beg that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a second time. All of our members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. All member for...
Mr. Speaker, I beg that you do now leave the chair and that the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Clause 1.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that Clause 1 stand part.
The question is that Clause 1 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 2.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to amend the definition under 2B. At the end of self-employed persons, the wording should be contract for services. And with that amendment, I beg to move that clause 2 I beg to move that clause 2 as amended. Stand part.
The question, is it second? Second. Second. Who seconded? Somebody seconded. I had a seconder. The question is that clause 2 stand part as amended. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
That clause 3 stand part.
The question is that clause 3 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, we say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clause 4 stand part.
The question is that clause 4 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that clause 5 be amended by deleting the word prescribe and substituting the word fix, therefore. And with that, I beg to move that clause 5 as amended, stand part.
The question is that clause 5 as amended stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clauses 6 to 10.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that clauses 6 to 10 stand part.
The question is that clauses 6 to 10 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Stand part.
The question is that clauses 11 to 15 stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
First schedule.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill.
The question is that the first schedule be the first schedule of the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The second schedule.
Mr. Chairman, in the second schedule, I wish to amend to make the following 2 amendments. Delete subparagraph A, resulting in the consequential renumbering of B and C to A and B, and that in the renumbered A, that we delete the words paragraph 11C, and substitute the words paragraph 11A and B, therefore. And with those amendments, I wish to beg that the second schedule as amended stand part.
The question is that the second schedule as amended stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, and just for clarity, this was at paragraph 10 that the honorable member was referring to.
Aye.
Thank you.
Paragraph 10 of the second schedule.
Second schedule.
Thank you.
Third schedule.
Mr. Chair, I wish to offer 2 amendments as follows. Paragraph 4A3 should be amended to read, notwithstanding regulation 4.1, a self-employed person may elect to pay his contribution at any time in the contribution year, and delete all the words appearing after the words contribution year. And secondly, paragraph 4D1, the number 3, which appears after 4A, is to be bracketed and should read 4A with the 3 in parentheses and brackets. And with those two amendments, Mr. Chairman, I beg to move that the third schedule as amended stand part.
The question is that the third schedule as amended stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Chairman, I beg that you do now report to His Honor the Speaker the passage of one bill in committee.
The question is that I do now report to His Honor the Speaker passing of one bill in committee. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman of committees has reported the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable member for St. Peter.
Mr. Speaker, I do now beg that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that the aforementioned bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg that this bill do not pass and be cited as the National Insurance and Social Security Amendment Number 2 Act 2023.
The question is that this bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honourable member for St. Joseph.
Mr. Speaker, with that, we've come to the end of Parliament's business for today. I beg to move, therefore, that we do now adjourn until Tuesday, 5th of December at 10 in the morning. Tuesday, 5th, 10 in the morning.
Question is that this honourable chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 5th day of December at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands adjourned until the 5th day of December 2023 at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.